The realtor's assignment was simple: appraise an old house on the outskirts of town. But he soon discovers it doesn't appear on any records, and every time he steps inside, the rooms have rearranged themselves. The ad for the property, a grainy photo of a salt and pepper colonial with a peeling porch, had been a curiosity in itself, a simple flyer tacked to a corkboard in the county records office, not a digital listing. Liam Thorne, a man who saw properties as puzzles of profit and loss, took the job out of a professional hunch. A note on the back, written in odd handwriting, said 1488 Whispering Pines, cash only. Call for directions. Liam had called. An old man with a voice like dry leaves had given him a series of convoluted landmark-based directions, insisting that GPS was unreliable out here. Following the winding, unpaved road, Liam found the house exactly as pictured: weathered gray siding, a sagging porch, and a single gnarled oak tree standing guard. The air was still and thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, a faint, coppery smell he couldn't place. He pulled his Lexus into the overgrown driveway, the gravel crunching under the tires like bone fragments. He checked his phone. No service. He had expected that. He also checked his appraisal software. Nothing. No address 1488 Whispering Pines. The street existed, but the numbers jumped from 1487 to 1489. This wasn't just a misfiled record. The house didn't exist in the digital world. A ghost in the machine, he thought, and a good story for his wife, Maria. The front door, a heavy slab of dark wood, was unlocked. He pushed it open and stepped into a foyer. The interior was a time capsule: dark mahogany paneling, a grand staircase with a carved newel post, and a faint, musty smell of decay and forgotten things. The air was colder inside than out. A single dusty chandelier hung above him, casting long, fractured shadows. He pulled out his flashlight and his digital clipboard, ready to begin his methodical inspection. The first floor seemed typical enough. A living room with a hearth, a dining room with a bay window, a small study. He noted the structural issues: water damage on the ceiling, warped floorboards, a draft from a sealed-off fireplace. He took photos, dictated notes. The strange thing was the silence. It wasn't just a lack of sound. It was an active, heavy presence, a silence that seemed to press in on him, listening. He dictated a note about it, then deleted it. Too fanciful. He made his way to the kitchen at the back of the house. It was smaller than he'd expected, with a single grimy window looking out onto a neglected garden. The wallpaper was a faded floral pattern, peeling at the corners. He photographed the cracked linoleum and the ancient, rusted stove. As he turned to leave, he noticed a door he hadn't seen before, tucked away behind what looked like a pantry. It was a simple, unmarked wooden door. He opened it, revealing a small, dark closet. Inside, there was nothing but a faint, metallic smell. He closed the door, shaking his head. Another curiosity to add to his report. He went back to the front of the house and ascended the grand staircase. The second floor was just as he'd imagined, a long hallway with 4 doors. He started with the one on the far left. It was a bedroom with a 4-poster bed covered in a dusty sheet. The window looked out over the front lawn. He checked the closet, noting the moth-eaten clothes hanging inside. The next room was a bathroom with a clawfoot tub and a single dripping faucet. The third door led to a child's room, wallpapered with cartoon animals. The fourth door was locked. He jiggled the handle, but it held fast. He'd have to find a key or break it down later. He went back downstairs to finish his measurements. He re-entered the foyer, then turned to go back to the living room. But something was wrong. The fireplace was on the other wall. The grand staircase was no longer directly in front of him. It was to his left. He felt a cold knot of dread tighten his stomach. He must have gotten turned around. It was a big house, and the shadows were playing tricks on him. He took a deep breath and tried to reorient himself. He walked into the room he now believed was the living room, but it was too small. The bay window was gone. In its place was a solid wall with a single narrow window looking out onto the side of the house. This wasn't the living room. It wasn't a room he had seen before. He went back into the foyer, his heart thumping. He looked at the staircase. It was still to his left. He walked over to it and put a hand on the knoll post. It felt different, smooth, not rough with carving. This wasn't the house he'd entered. He had to be mistaken. He was tired. He had been on the road all morning. Maybe he had a mild concussion from something he'd forgotten. He decided to leave. He had enough notes for a preliminary report, and he could come back tomorrow with a colleague. As he walked toward the front door, he realized it was now a set of French doors, opening onto a sunroom he hadn't seen before. The sunroom was filled with dead potted plants and a lingering smell of old perfume. He went back, but the mahogany paneling was gone, replaced by a simple plaster wall. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prick at him. He ran to the front door, the original front door, the heavy slab of dark wood, and pushed. It didn't open. The door handle was gone. It was just a solid wall now. He was trapped. He took a step back, his eyes darting around the foyer. The staircase was now behind him, leading up to a small landing with a single door. The chandelier was a bare bulb. The musty smell was now overpowering, and with it, the metallic tang was stronger, like old blood. He had to get out. He remembered the kitchen. The kitchen had a window. He ran, or tried to, but the hallway was a long, endless corridor, a funhouse mirror of a space he had just walked through. The doors he passed were all identical, unmarked, and all locked. He pounded on one. No sound came out, not even the echo of his own fist. The silence was absolute. He felt like he was screaming in a vacuum. He finally reached what he thought was the kitchen. It was larger now, with a central island and modern stainless steel appliances, but the window was gone. In its place was a wall of black tile. On the counter, a single rusty knife lay next to a small, worn leather journal. The journal was open to a page filled with the same spidery script from the flyer. The page was a list of names followed by dates. The names were all women. The dates were all in the past. He backed away, the metallic smell choking him. He went to the front of the house again, hoping to find the French doors, the original door, anything. But the foyer was now a small, cramped room with no windows, only a single low door that looked like it led to a cellar. The floorboards were rough and splintered. He could hear a faint rhythmic sound coming from below, a slow scraping sound. Scrape, drag, drape, drag. He crouched in a corner, his heart hammering against his ribs, and tried to make sense of what was happening. He was hallucinating. That had to be it. The isolation, the lack of sleep, the strange smells. It was all a delusion. He closed his eyes, counted to 10, and opened them again. The room was the same, small, cramped, no windows. But the low door was now a set of double doors, tall and imposing, leading into what looked like a grand ballroom, albeit one in complete darkness. A single note was taped to one of the doors. Find the key. He stood up, his legs shaking. He didn't want to find the key. He wanted to get out. He remembered the small, unmarked door in the original kitchen, the one that led to the closet. He had to retrace his steps. He started walking, but the house kept shifting. The long hallway was a circular corridor. The staircase was a spiral now, leading down into the darkness. He felt like he was walking in a dream or a nightmare. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. He had lost all sense of time. The rooms kept changing, each one more unsettling than the last. A nursery with an empty, rocking cradle. A library with books filled with indecipherable symbols. A cold, tiled room with a single drain in the center of the floor. The metallic smell was now a constant, suffocating presence. The scraping sound from below had grown louder, more distinct. It sounded like something was being dragged across a stone floor. He found himself back in the foyer, but it was a different foyer now. The grand staircase was a rickety ladder leading to a small attic hatch. He saw a glimmer of light from a window, and he scrambled up the ladder, his muscles burning. He pushed the hatch open and pulled himself into the attic. It was a vast, dusty space filled with forgotten furniture and old crates. The light was coming from a small, dirty window in the far corner. He stumbled toward it, his hopes soaring. Freedom. He peered out the window. It wasn't the front lawn. It wasn't a garden. It was a narrow, dark alley. And standing in the alley, his back to Liam, was a tall, hunched figure, dragging something heavy wrapped in a canvas tarp, the sound he had been hearing. The figure stopped and looked up, as if it knew he was watching. It was the old man who had given him the directions. He was smiling. The smile was not kind. The old man raised a hand and pointed to a single small window on the side of the house, a window he recognized. The window from the first room he'd entered after the foyer, the study. Liam scrambled back down the ladder, his mind racing. The study. He had to get to the study. He ran, but the house's layout was a malicious labyrinth. He found himself in a basement, a cold, damp space with a single light bulb swinging from a wire. The scraping sound was deafening now. In the far corner, he saw the old man, still hunched over the canvas tarp. He wasn't dragging it. He was carefully, methodically wiping something off the floor with a rag. The coppery smell was thickest here. Liam backed away. A silent scream caught in his throat, and he ran up the stairs. He found himself in the study. The real study. The room with the sealed-off fireplace. The room with the single grimy window looking out onto a neglected garden. The room he had been in at the beginning. But the window wasn't a window. It was a mirror. And in the reflection, he saw himself, but not quite. The man in the mirror was haggard, his eyes wide with a frantic, desperate fear. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. In the reflection, Liam saw the old man standing behind him, a faint, translucent figure. The old man smiled, and his lips parted. "You're getting warmer." Liam whirled around. Nothing, no one was there. He turned back to the mirror. The reflection of the old man was gone. He looked at his own reflection. His eyes were no longer frantic. They were dead, resigned, and a faint, spidery script was appearing on the mirror, written on the glass in reverse, as if from the other side. 1488 Whispering Pines. The address is the key. He remembered the address. It was the first thing he'd written down, 1488. He looked at the fireplace, sealed off. He went over to it, running his hands over the brick. The bricks were loose. He pulled one out, then another. Inside, he found a small, rusted tin box. He opened it. Inside was a single, tarnished key and a small, folded piece of paper. He unfolded it. It was a single, simple floor plan. A simple colonial. A living room, a dining room, a kitchen. It was the house he had walked into. The real house. The house before it had started to change. He looked at the floor plan again. A small room, a study, a fireplace. Next to the fireplace in the corner was a small, unmarked door. The door to the closet he had seen in the kitchen. But on the floor plan, the room was labeled The Heart. He looked at the key. It was old, intricate. He went to the wall where the fireplace was now sealed off. He saw a small, almost invisible keyhole in the brick. He inserted the key. It turned with a satisfying click. The entire fireplace wall began to slide open, revealing a hidden passage. The passage was dark and smelled of dust and old perfume. He stepped inside. The passage led to a small circular room. In the center was a simple wooden box. He opened the box. Inside was a collection of objects: a child's worn-out teddy bear, a silver locket, a pair of reading glasses, a set of keys. On top of the objects was a single, laminated ID card. It was his, Liam Thorne, appraiser. The photo was recent. Below the photo, in the spidery script, were the words, "And the truth will set you free." He looked at the objects. He didn't recognize them. He looked at his ID. It felt real. He touched his face. His skin felt real. He was real. But then a thought, cold and alien, whispered into his mind. These are not your memories. These are their memories, the ones you've forgotten, the ones who are still here. He heard a voice. It was his own. It was coming from a corner of the room. He turned and saw a figure crouching in the shadows, holding a small digital clipboard. It was himself, but younger, with an eager, excited look on his face. He was dictating notes. Found a locked door. Have to find a key, something about a fireplace. The younger Liam looked up, his eyes meeting the older Liam's, and for a second their perspectives aligned. The young Liam was a man who had entered a house, a simple house with a few quirks, and had spent a few minutes taking notes. The house was cold, but it was just old. The silence was just the absence of sound. The weird metallic smell was just old pipes. He was about to leave and come back with a colleague to break the lock on the one door he couldn't open. The locked door was his last, lingering thought before he'd gone back downstairs. He was halfway to the front door, the real front door, when a sudden sound from the basement had made him stop. A scraping sound, a voice. You're not supposed to see this. The old Liam, the one who had been in the labyrinth, suddenly understood. He wasn't the appraiser. He was the house. He was the collection of memories, the echo of the people who had been trapped here. The rooms were their shared nightmares, their fears, their regrets. The house was not changing. He was. Every time a new room appeared, it was a fragment of a new person's memory, a new person who had been lured in and trapped. He looked down at his hands. They were translucent. He was becoming part of the house, a faint, lingering presence. The scraping sound was not the old man. It was the young Liam, now trapped in the labyrinth, trying to find a way out, being slowly, methodically erased. The old man, the realtor, was the one who collected them. He was the one who had given him the directions. He was the house. He was the memory, the collective consciousness of all the lost souls. He felt the last of his own memories slipping away, like water through his fingers. His wife, Maria, her face was blurry. Her name was a whisper. The objects in the box were the last physical remnants of the people who had been consumed by the house. He was looking at his own epitaph. He was just another entry in the old man's journal, another name on the list. The last thing he saw was the young Liam's face, a look of pure, unadulterated terror, before the memory dissolved, and he became a part of the house. He became the metallic smell, the cold, the silence, the labyrinth, the house with no address. What do you think happened to Liam? Was he the first to get lost, or just the most recent?